The second point that I would like to explain at the beginning, which is the risk management strategies. And this is also, it's under the basic definition part, which is how are you going to deal with risk? In the previous lecture, we explained what is risk and what is the process for a risk analysis. But once you identify the risk and you are able to get the risk value, which you're going to see in this section, how are you going to deal with it? We have four different strategies for dealing with risk, and this is quite important actually. The first one is risk mitigation. Risk mitigation means that I will try to reduce the risk. So for instance, I may have a risk from a denial of service. So I'll try to buy some software or some equipment or spend some money to reduce the risk of denial of service. So by doing that, if it happens, it will not affect my system very badly. This is called mitigation, which is reducing the risk by spending on it or taking some countermeasure to try to reduce the risk. But the question is, can I eliminate the risk? No, we can't. There will always be a part of the risk that you are not aware of, because no one can know or can identify all the threats that may happen. It's quite kind of impossible. So there will always be a part of the risk that you are not aware of. You cannot identify it. But we try to reduce it, but we will never get zero risk. The second strategy for risk management or dealing with risk is acceptance. Sometimes the countermeasure for a risk is too expensive. So you may have to spend $10,000 to reduce the risk while all the assets that you have worth $5,000. It doesn't make any sense to spend on security more than the value of your assets. Okay, if your house or your home, you have your valuable things at your home worth $1,000, it doesn't make sense to buy locks and surveillance cam and alarm system that cost you $10,000. So sometimes the amount of money that you should spend to reduce the risk is too high. Or maybe as a company or as a business, you don't have a budget for that. In this case, you can accept the risk. So the second strategy is acceptance. And acceptance means you will do nothing about it. Because after all, risk is an uncertain event. It may happen or not, right? I mean, you are trying to identify the vulnerability. You are trying to identify the threat. You are trying to identify the probability of happening, but maybe it will not happen, right? You have a problem. Your data is not encrypted. The protocol that is communicating with other devices is not using encryption, for instance. Something may go wrong or not. So some people will accept the risk in a sense that if it happens, I will find a workaround. So this is very important. What is acceptance? It's to do nothing about the risk because the risk is an uncertain event. It may happen or not. The third way or third strategy to dealing with the risk will be transferring the risk. So transferring means putting the risk on someone else. For instance, insurance. I cannot spend money on the risk. I don't have a budget. I don't have the technical skills. I don't have people to manage that. So what I'm going to do, I will buy an insurance policy. If anything went wrong, they will pay for it. We call that transferring the risk. In real life or in real implementation, transferring could be transferring to another entity. You are not managing the service because you don't have a technical skills or the technical people to managing, so I'm going to give that to another company. And by doing that, I'm transferring the risk to them. Okay. The fourth and last way for risk management is the avoidance. And avoidance means I will change the solution. So for instance, you are implementing an IoT solution, and you are identifying the risk, you are doing a risk assessment, and you find that, or you found that the risk is you have too much risk, and you need to spend a lot to mitigate all those risks. And it happens sometimes. Okay. So what you decide to do is to change your implementation. I will not do this project. I will use other equipment. I will use other technologies. This is called avoidance. I need you to distinguish between avoidance and acceptance. Acceptance means you will do nothing about it. You will still do the same solution, but you will do nothing about it. And if something went wrong, you will try to find a workaround. While avoidance means that you will change your solution completely because it's too much risk that need to be mitigated. So those are the 4 risk management strategy that you need to be aware of. So not all risks need to be mitigated. Some risk will be accepted. Now, in an important remark in this part, that if you are doing an implementation of any system and there is some risk that management don't have a budget to spend on it, didn't approve the budget, you have to make them sign a risk acceptance, because this is usually the responsibility of the management. The management is the one who's approving the budget. The management is the one who approving to spend to reducing the risk. So if the management didn't approve that, for any reason, it could be, shortage of, like, they don't have enough budget. It could be that they are not convinced with your risk management or risk assessment. In all cases, who should accept or take the responsibility is management. That's why we usually have something called risk acceptance list, where we are writing down all the risks that we need to accept it, and it need to be signed from management. Another note that I would like also to clarify, which is sometimes the acceptance come from the limitation of some technology. So for instance, you are using a specific equipment that only can work on an old operating system. It can only use an old Windows, like Windows XP, that is out of support and very vulnerable. If you move this system from Windows, it will not work, or this application, it only work on an old operating system. In this case, this is a limitation in the program. So you will need to accept it. If the probability of happening is not too high and the risk also is accepted. So it's a big topic, but after all, you need to understand that it's the management responsibility. So those are the 4 different risk management strategy.